Okay, let's run.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it.
It's a quest. It's a quest for fun.
Well, The Rock says, why don't we just cut right to the chase?
Okay, now he wants to get together. Well, he wants to talk.
I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
It's showtime, folks!
What are you?
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to And I Quote, the weekly show where we introduce you to content creators of all shapes and sizes that join us from many and all corners of the nerd universe. We find out more about them by taking your questions. I am your host, Ryan of Nerd Culture, and as you may have noticed, our studio is decked out in some different shades of different colors, featuring 5 that later on became 6 teenagers with attitude, because we have a very special guest join us. Please welcome actor, writer, the OG Zordon himself, David Fielding. David, welcome to the set. How are you, sir?
I am good. Thanks for having me.
Well, we are very thankful that you are here with us. Now, if you have any questions for David Fielding as we go throughout the course of this show, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. We're going to be keeping an eye on it as we go throughout the course of the broadcast. And if this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for being here. And don't forget to like and share this with all of your closest friends. With that being said, David, what would you say were some of your favorite books or writers growing up?
Oh, wow. Sorry, my cat is meowing. I started to read a lot very early on. My mother was very good about sitting with me as a child and reading books with me. So I learned to read really early. And so was from a very young age was generally reading like 3, 4, 5 grades ahead of whatever my classmates are reading. And so I started to read a lot of pulp novels from like the early 30s, and Edgar Rice Burroughs was a big one for me. H.G. Wells, a lot of I was always drawn towards science fiction and fantasy kind of stuff. So I read a lot of science fiction, action adventure, fantasy books. I was a huge Stephen King reader. I read so many of his books, and when I began to get into acting and stuff, and we would do forensic tournaments with the junior college that I was at, and we would go to different tournaments, and I would perform. I would cut together some of Stephen King's short stories and read them and present them as a story that way, and so anything that would take me out of the real world was in my wheelhouse. I loved reading that kind of stuff.
Ooh, really? That's really fascinating.
Yeah.
That's really fascinating stuff. And by the way, TM Smith Reaction says, hello, Ryan, and hello to our wise sage known as Zordon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Says Tim Smith, good friend of the studio, good friend of the show. What would you say were some of your favorite movies or TV series growing up?
Wow. One of my earliest memories of television was the Avengers series, from England, with Patrick Winnie and Diana Rigg, who also happened to be my first crush. But I also grew up watching a lot of, like most American kids, Saturday morning cartoons and afternoon programming. So I grew up with The Electric Company and Sesame Street and Land of the Lost and Sigmund and the Sea Monsters. And then once I got older, of course, I started to watch the programming that would come on in the evenings, and anything that was about taking me out of the real world. The Incredible Hulk TV series, the Wonder Woman TV series. Anytime that they had announced that they were going to do an Edgar Rice Burroughs movie, I was all about that. The land that people forgot and all that kind of stuff. And I even sat through those gosh awful Captain America movies that they made, and kind because at the time it was the only thing. And then, and of course, in 1978, the first real superhero movie was made, and that was Richard Donner's Superman. And I sat through that movie 30 times in the theater because it was just so uplifting. And then from there, I sort of shifted to things that might be like a little, what you consider like a little darker, a little bit more realistic. Escape from New York, Terminator, all the pop culture stuff that is alive again today is the stuff that I grew up with. Heavy metal. I was a huge D&D fan. I still play D&D to this day. So yeah, anything that had to do with science fiction or fantasy or action adventure stuff, I was all about that.
Amazing stuff. I was actually introduced professionally to Diana Rigg's work in a little film called The Great Muppet Caper.
Yeah.
When the baseball diamond was stolen. What color are their hands now? That was my introduction to Diana Rigg as an actress. Wonderful actress, by the way, 100%.
Yeah.
No question. By the way, Skylar Productions says, "Good evening, everyone." She's up in Canada.
Hi. Wow. Awesome. Yeah. I wish I was up in Canada.
she's actually in Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Oh, awesome. Actually. Very cool.
Yeah, that's where our good friend Willow Schuyler is located. So there you go. Fun facts. And you mentioned something about pulp characters a moment ago. Did you ever get a chance to read some of those stories featuring characters such as the Shadow or maybe the Phantom?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I only mentioned the Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff and Tarzan, the Princess of Mars, but I read a lot of Doc Savage. I read a lot of the Shadow, Spider, all those guys. And I think that's one of the reasons why Blade Runner is such a big book, such a big film for me, is because in my fantasy imaginings about myself, that's the kind of character I would like to be. I am enamored of the aesthetics from that time period, the way people dressed, the way people talked, just the look and feel of the pulp era, I think, is something that I could, or I would love to settle into as a sort of virtual reality kind of thing, without all of the inherent negative stuff that actually took place during that time. There was a lot of ugly stuff that happened during the pulp era, but and again, a lot of those books, they don't translate well to today. The stuff that I was reading seems pretty crude by today's standards. It's full of stereotypes and racial tropes and the kind of thing that would make a lot of people uncomfortable today. But as long as you keep it in the period in which it's set, I mean, it works or whatever. But none of that stuff would fly today. Those characters would be considered not good characters, but I mean, I at the time I was reading them and I was learning about story beats and how stories are put together and how writers are able to weave together these intricate plots that all work out into the end. And so I think it was good for me to have that as sort of like a springboard to leading to different other things that have moved storytelling and writing forward over the years. So yeah,
absolutely fair points. And once again, we are talking with the legend known as David Fielding, OG Zordon, on this episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this with all of your closest friends. If you have any questions for David, please let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat, whether you're watching this live or on the replay. And Tim Smith has a question here. He asks, were you a fan of the 1980s sci-fi show known as the original Battlestar Galactica?
Yeah, I mean, I remember Lorne Greene and the opening theme with Richard Hatch and Dirk Benedict and the one episode of Battlestar that always sticks with me is it's sort of like, again, it was based off the Western trope of the showdown where you had I think the Cylon was actually named Red Eye, where his eye would move back and forth, and then it would like freeze in the middle, and that's when he would shoot. And they had like a showdown, and it was very sort of cowboy like. But yeah, I enjoyed the original Battlestar. Yeah, I mean, I love the shape of the ships, those little triangle shaped ships that, you know, and then you would go to the arcade and you would play what was that one video game where you would shoot asteroids, and your ship looked like, you know, one of the ships from Battlestar. So
Yeah, I can't remember the name of that particular game, but if anyone else has a thought on that, please, by all means, let us know in the chat.
It was vector graphics, so the meteorites were all just like green lines and very glowy, and it was
okay. Interesting.
Wasted way too many quarters playing that freaking thing.
So many quarters, so little time. Yeah. When did you decide to become a writer?
I was always trying to. My actual decision to become a writer was not that long ago, about 2011, I think. But before that, I mean, I was always writing stuff down. When I was playing Dungeons and Dragons in high school, I did a lot of writing. I was always better off than a lot of the students that I went to high school and college with, because I found creative writing very fun, and a lot of my friends didn't. They found it to be tough and hard, you know, almost as tough and hard as standing up and speaking in front of people. It's one of those things that you know, for me, it's math. Math is very, very not anything I want to deal with, but for whatever reason, putting words together and creating sentences and telling a story has always been something that's very attractive to me. So I remember when I was 13 or 14, I wrote a Christmas story for my brother and sister that I read to them on Christmas Eve to try to get them excited about what was going to happen the next day. And then, of course, you know, I was reading a lot of Stephen King, so I would try to write up some of my own scary stories for myself. And, you know, they ended up just being like very poor examples of what he was writing in his books. But again, it was just all part of that info dump that was going into my brain and sort of like teaching me about how to get better at it. And so I think I've always been drawn to writing, but I didn't really actually get serious about it until like 2011, something like that.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say are some of the biggest rewards about being a writer?
The fact that I can actually tell a story is a very big reward for me. Right now, what's happening in the entertainment industry is that there's a writer's strike going on, and because because of the society that we live in, where you know, people are always we have to fight so hard to get paid. A lot of the times, it's I've chosen two professions that do not do that very well. I have never been a person that has been chasing after the almighty dollar. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be living where I'm at now. You know, I might be in a little bit better position, but I think the reward of being able to tell a story in my own words that somebody can read and get excited about and sort of want to stop and talk to me about, oh, I love this, you know, this part here, or the way that you wrote that sentence really, you know, captured my imagination. And so I think that's the kind of reward that really means a lot to me. Knowing, you know, that I've written stuff that's completed, that's out there on the shelves and has a cover and has artwork. I think I find that to be a very sort of wish fulfilling kind of thing. It's like I can hold it in my hands and say, I did this. This is something I made out of nothing. And now it's a reality. And that, to me, that's all part of the reward of it.
Rock on. I totally respect that. On the flip side of the coin, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges about being a writer?
Writing itself. I mean, I'm not a very disciplined writer. I'm going to bring up Stephen King because if there's anybody on the planet who represents the endless churning machine of stories, it's Mr. King. I mean, he's written so much and he's written so many things. It's almost impossible to read them all, unless you. I've found as I've gotten older and as I've concentrated more on my own writing, I don't read as much as I used to. I would read a book every 3 or 4 days. I was just obsessed with stories, and I couldn't wait to go to the bookstore. I think because a lot of brick and mortar bookstores don't exist anymore, I don't have a place to go to look for something new to read anymore. And yeah, I could buy it off Amazon, but I mean, that seems half the fun was going to the bookstore. Half the fun was going and looking at all the covers and being able to pick them up and smell them. And I really kind of miss that. But I think the hardest thing about writing is actually sitting down, looking at the blank page, and then getting over that first hurdle of, how do I start? What needs to be said? And, the ever big present question for me is, what is this story about? And, to go back what I said about Stephen King is a very disciplined writer. He gets up and he writes for 4 hours every morning, and then he stops and he goes and spends the rest of his day doing his own thing. Me, I'm such a, I write throughout the day. In spurts, I may write for 10 minutes and then go do something else and check my email or surf the internet or whatever, and then come back and write a few words or a couple of sentences and then go away again. And so my process about putting words to paper would probably drive a lot of other writers nuts. They would be like, that seems like a very awful process. And of course, the other thing I do as a writer that you're not supposed to do is I edit as I write. I'm not very good at just puking everything out onto the page and then going back and reworking it later on. My brain, for whatever reason, will just look at a sentence I just wrote and go, you could do better with that. And so I spend more time than I need to reworking a sentence and then sort of losing track of where I was going until 10 minutes later. And I was like, oh yeah, I got to go do that. And, but yeah, for me, I mean, the toughest thing about writing is the actual act of doing it itself.
Absolutely. I can totally understand that. And once again, we are talking with David Fielding on this very special episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this with all of your closest friends. If you have any questions for David, by all means, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. Whether you're watching this live or on the replay, we appreciate you being here. We really do. Now, I do have something I would like to share with you, and this is also just to give the for those of you who are listening, I will describe this as best I can. We have a cover of a book here that you wrote. It's called Gaunts, which is a Lincoln Bright novel. How did this come about?
In 2013, I started writing what I thought was going to be a short story, which ended up turning into a small novella called Buddy Holly and the Cold, Cold Ground. I wanted to try my hand at writing a ghost story. And knowing that the way the entertainment machine works, you have to try to find a way to make your product different from everybody else. I mean, how many ghost stories are there? How many stories do we have about phantoms that come and haunt a place or something like that? So my idea was that I had this character whose name is Lincoln Bright, and he could see and hear these things that other people couldn't. What you and I would call ghosts, he calls glims. And glims are these negative energy entities that are what remains after somebody who has a lot of great anger and great hate in them. When they die, that's what's left behind. And the longer the glim sticks around, it creates what is called a gaunt. And the gaunt is this very thin, oily, viscous pool, if you will, that continues to grow out as long as the glim is still active. And the glim begins to pick away at the walls of reality. And if they pick a big enough hole in reality, the things that live on the other side are going to come through into our world and then cause a lot of death and destruction and mayhem. And so Lincoln is one of those rare people that can see these things, and he has to put a stop to them. And so when I was writing this initial story about Buddy hauling the cold, cold ground, I was focusing on this idea of why is it that people feel haunted? What is it that is so traumatic in their life that it sticks around with them? And I realized about 7,000 or 8,000 words into the story, I knew what that story was all about. And I sent it off to our friend and I said, read this for me and let me know if you can figure out what it is that I'm talking about here. And he read it and he goes, oh yeah, you're talking about your divorce. So that was the initial underlying idea of me trying to work through my own personal trauma, of trying to put this emotional upheaval that had happened in my life and to put it to rest, to come up with a character who could give that sort of like a physical thing that he could struggle against and then put an end to it. And that was the impetus for the Lincoln Bright series. And then I finished that, I think, in 2013, and then did a few other short stories. And then I really wanted to write a novel. And Lincoln was always there in the back of my mind about, hey, I've got other stories I want to tell. And then it just grew from there. And I was able to an acquaintance that I had met on Facebook introduced me to an independent publisher, and that's how the first Lincoln Bright novel, Glims, got published, and then Gaunts and Gifts should be out very shortly. The third Lincoln Bright novel, yeah.
Yeah, that's the and this is the image of the cover for Glims, which is part of the Lincoln Bright series. So that's coming up soon, or it's about to be released.
Glims is the first one, and it came out first, and then Gaunts
right,
is the second one, yeah, and Gifts is the third one that's coming out. So this is the first cover, and then the second cover, you can see the face is much more decayed, and then the third cover is going to take that to the next conclusion. So, and then I have the fourth book that I should be writing, but at this moment in time, I'm not very motivated to work on it. There's everything, the world seems to be crowding in lately, and I can't focus on it right now. So
it's okay. But congratulations on this series, and congratulations on those books. That is fascinating stuff, just by the premise alone. Yeah. And Lincoln Bright's a cool name for a character.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things that, it was one of those serendipitous, oh, this works really well, Lincoln Bright. So yeah, I mean, it was awesome. So.
Absolutely. And something, we're gonna take a trip back here for just a moment, if you don't mind, to a wonderful year called 1993, when just this very small show came out, made a big impact on millions upon millions of children around the world. It was called Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and it debuted on August 28th, 1993. And we are currently in the midst of its 30th anniversary year celebration, as you can tell by our background here in the studio, virtually, of course, and now as we have here. You play this legendary character known as Zordon, the wise sage guiding the Rangers, all that wonderful stuff. So my first question is, how were you approached about the series, or how did you find out about it?
I found out about the series, or the chance to audition for the series, through a college friend of mine. When I was doing my undergraduate work at Southwest Texas State University in Texas, I had made a number of friends, and we did plays together, and we did, we went to house parties and stuff together. And when I went to the University of Pittsburgh to get my master's degree, a lot of those friends from Texas moved out to California. And when I joined them 3 years later, I already had like a small network of friends that had been living there for a while. They all helped me find an apartment. They all kind of helped guide me around town for the first couple of weeks. And one of those friends was Stacy Fish. Stacy Fish had been working as on the production side of a lot of the projects that Saban was doing at the time. A lot of their direct-to-video movies that they were doing, she was doing production work on those. And she called me 2 months after I moved to Los Angeles and to say, hey, I'm working on this kids television pilot for this company. We're having an audition for a character later on this afternoon, and I think you'd be really great for it. Would you like to come down and audition for it? And I said, yeah, of course. That's why I'm here. And I went down there expecting it to be a general cattle call. There'd be 15,000 guys. They'd all read their lines onto a camera, and then I'd go home and I would never hear anything again, because that's how things work, or that was the general story that everybody told. But when I got down to the building that night, or that afternoon, it was just me and another guy. And they said, we're casting it tonight and we're going to film it next week. Are you available? And of course, yeah, of course I'll make myself available if I get it or whatever. And because I understood right away that this is a very unusual situation. This normally isn't, or at least in my head, that was not how things were done. I'm sure there are other cases where people were like, oh yeah, I auditioned for this thing and it just happened, it just worked that way. But for me, this was sort of like really out of the norm. And I was like, oh, okay. But I had the training, I had the ability, and I was ready to do whatever, had needed to be done. So it wasn't just a fact of being in the right place at the right time. It was also being prepared for it as well. That's another big thing that a lot of people discount about how some things work is, yeah, I mean, there is that sort of like right place, right time element, but if you're not prepared for it, you can blow it very easily. So that's how that whole thing came about. And I just happened to be the guy they chose that night. So.
My goodness gracious. And once you got the part of Zordon, what was the voiceover portion of it like? Did you have to go to the studio for a couple of days? Did it take a matter of time? What was the process like becoming this character, and how long were you in studio recording the lines for this character?
We used the voice that I basically used during the audition. I think they might have augmented it in the production studio with maybe a little bit of echo and a little bit of electronic tweaking to it. But for the most part, the deep register of his voice and the way he spoke in a sort of very clipped manner was what I had used in the audition. And getting the role and was great, and filming it was fun. And then when I got the phone call about it being picked up, and I was like, great, that's fantastic. When do I report to set? And they're like, oh, well, we're not going to film you anymore. We're just going to use your voice. So that was sort of like a bittersweet wake up call about, oh yeah, welcome to Hollywood. And so right from the get-go, I was very much like the character himself. I was completely separated from the rest of the cast. I didn't see them again for 20 years. I would just go into the booth every 5 or 6 weeks to record the 8 or 10 lines that Zordon might have per episode, or 3 lines per episode that Zordon might have. Because let's face it, in that first season or so, Zordon was basically just your expositionary character, where he would like, this is the monster, this is what you need to do, go after it, Power Rangers, I believe in you. That was basically it. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of depth or complex shades to the character. He was very sort of cardboard and cartoony, but I mean, the show was made for a certain age group, so that's all he needed to be, and so it was fine.
Oh, I understand. And once again, we are talking about the incredible David Fielding on this very special episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this with all of your friends. And if you have any questions for David, please let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. Be more than happy to hear from you. Whether you are tuning in live or on the replay, greatly appreciate it. 100%. Were you, by any chance, maybe not so much at the time, but maybe a little bit later on during the first season of the show, maybe, I'm not 100% sure, were you familiar with any of the other voice actors that played any of the other parts within the show, whether it was Barbara Goodson or Kerrigan Mayhem? Were you familiar with any of those other voice actors?
I think I met Richard Horvitz and Barbara in the studio one time, but it was a very sort of like brief meeting. It wasn't like we hung out and went to dinner or anything like that. The main people that I knew on the show were Tony Oliver, who was the head writer. He was also in the ADR booth whenever we would do the lines, because we were speaking the lines that he and the team had written, so he was there to help guide what was going on. And Steve Paget was there. I knew a lot of the voice engineer guys. I didn't, like I said, I was never on set with the original cast, because when we filmed the pilot, the Yellow Ranger was played by Audrey Dubois, but when the show was picked up, Twee Trang was cast as the Yellow Ranger, and I never got a chance to meet Twee. So Twee was on the show, and she was a big part of it, and then in 2001 she passed, and I didn't get to meet Robert Manahan, who took over the voice of Zordon after I left. I never met him. I didn't actually get to meet Robert Axelrod until conventions were rolling around. I didn't get to meet Lord Zed. I didn't meet Jason David Frank until we started doing conventions and stuff. So a lot of things about the show were, again, very much like the character itself. I was over here, they were over there. And so I on one hand, I was part of this very interesting and quirky kids television show that sort of like shot off into the stratosphere. But on the other hand, I didn't feel connected to it at all very much. It was just sort of like this day gig that I would get like every 5 or 6 weeks, where I would go in and make $150 doing lines and stuff, and then I would go home. So yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But
well, maybe-
it was very interesting to walk into a Blockbuster and see my face on the back of a video box and go, there I am.
Yep, there were the VHS boxes. There were also the McDonald's or Burger King toys.
Yeah, I mean, and there was also sort of like this sort of shadow guilt, because when I was in LA, I was also part of the LA Connection Improv Theater, and I met a lot of actors there who had been in LA for 15, 20 years and had been striving to do what I did in the first 2 months of actually being there. I got cast on a television show, and they'd been trying to do that for 15 or 20 years and had gone to audition after audition and come this close, or they were doing like the stand-up routine before Price is Right or whatever. And they just never really kind of got over the hump and got picked. And so I felt really kind of bad on some level that here I was part of a show that was going to be on television. But on the other hand, I felt like I wasn't part of that show at all. So, I mean, it was just like this weird sort of like being pulled in like 4 different directions about the whole thing. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, I'll say with the part of it being the isolation from the rest of the cast and the crew and all the other things that went on during the course of the show. But I will say that our good friend Tim Smith has a question for you. He asks, looking back now, are you surprised of how big the show got and how beloved the character of Zordon became in the fandom?
Yeah, I mean, I am, because when we did it, when we were filmed the pilot in 1992, and when they were filming, the episodes in early 93, there was no such thing as social media. There had not been the pop culture explosion. This was just a kids television show that might be on the air for a year, and then it would get replaced by something else, because that was kind of like the norm, right? Because every fall there was a new crop of kids television programming that would show up on the air, and it would last for one season and it would go away, or it would last for 2 seasons and it would go away. So when I was there in LA working on the show, it hadn't actually hit the air yet. It was just sort of like this thing that was hanging off in the ether, and had no idea where it was going to go or what was going to happen with it. And of course, because I was busy living my life trying to audition to do other things, I wasn't privy to the information about how much money they were pouring into the toys. And I think one of the main reasons why the show was so successful from day one is that if you look at other pop culture superhero type shows like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or Transformers, if you saw those shows on television, you had to wait 6 to 8 months before those toys showed up on the shelves. The day that Power Rangers premiered, the toys were already in the shelves. The kids had them in their hands while they were watching the show, so they could immediately relive what they just saw on television. And so I think that was one of the reasons that it took off right away, because it was real to the kids. They had it, they could touch it. And I've been very surprised at that people place such an emphasis on the character I played, because I felt for a very long time that my contribution to the show was very minimal. That I didn't get to have the experience that the other guys did, where they were on set 16 hours out of every day, working really hard to make this program. I felt like I had a momentary glimpse into that world, and then I kind of got cut out of it, and I would just go into a dark booth with a microphone every 5 or 6 weeks to do voices and stuff. So, and part of me was very envious of not being able to have that sort of like, I'm a working actor in Hollywood experience. And so for a long, once when I left LA, I sort of forgot about it, because this was before the internet really took off. This was before syndication. This was before streaming content, any of that kind of stuff, where, the show continues to live this day because of the internet and because of streaming and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it was very surprising in the Christmas of 1993 to be going to a mall and wondering why everybody was crowded around KB Toys and, fighting for the Power Rangers toys, and then seeing my face on the Power Dome and going, oh, wow, I'll never see a penny of that. And, it was just very surreal and strange, but yeah, very surprised.
Well, I think you did a great job playing this character personally.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I think you did a more phenomenal job. And as far as the toys go, I remember my family getting me the flip heads, the flip head figures. So I remember having those when the show first kicked off, I think back in 93, or whether it was late 93, early 94, when they did get me the flip head action figures. I can't remember specifically, but either way, it was cool stuff. Oh, goodness gracious. With that being said, I do want to take a moment and actually, before I get to that, what in your mind, what is your favorite line or episode that you were featured in of the show as Zordon?
It's going to sound really cheesy, but it's always the first episode. There's a moment, if you go back and watch Day of the Dumpster, when the kids are first teleported into the command center, and Zordon explains who he is and what's going on with Rita, and they get over that, with Alpha and stuff. There comes a moment in that exchange where Kimberly says, I don't think this is for me, I'm out of here, and Walter's like, yeah, I don't think I want to do this too, and David and Twee are like, yeah, let's move on. But Jason kind of stays, and he shares a look with Zordon that I think sort of like foreshadows the leadership role that Jason is going to take on. And that episode is always my favorite, because it's the first time that Zordon calls them Power Rangers for the first time. He gives them the power coins for the first time. And it's that sort of accepting the mantle of the hero that happens in that moment that is very special for me. And I think that's a a very special moment for a lot of 5 and 6 and 7-year-old kids who are like, I could be that guy, because when they transform into the Power Rangers, they're in these solid color suits with these masks on. It could be me behind the mask. It could be, little David, 7 years old, watching the show, and I could become the Green Ranger or whatever. So I think that was a very, I think the depth of that moment was more than what they intended when they wrote it. They were just sort of like writing it as like, yeah, this is what's going to happen in the show. But I think when you spend a little bit more time thinking about it, it's a pretty powerful moment for the kids and for the show itself. So.
Absolutely. I can remember that. Honestly, I've watched that episode so many times, whether it be on VHS, streaming, or otherwise. And I just, to this day, when I watch Day of the Dumpster, I'm in awe. I'm watching it. I go back to when I was 6 years old, watching the show when it debuted, and I was so excited. I was so happy. I couldn't be happier, because I at the time I was being bullied at school. So when I came home and watched Power Rangers every day, it was, it was an escape from all that. And
well, when the main theme kicks in and you hear the guitar
Ron Wasserman. Oh my goodness.
I mean, without Ron's music, the show wouldn't be what it is. I mean, so many elements came together. It was just truly lightning in a bottle. That watching it play out over at a friend's house when it was broadcast for the first time, we were like, wow, okay, that's in your face. And it was a lot of fun. And, I grew up watching Ultraman and Spectreman and Kaiju, and I ate up any sort of Japanese thing that they brought over during the 70s and 80s, Marine Boys, Speed Racer, Battle for the Planets. I loved all that stuff. And so when they explained to me, what the show was about, I'm like, oh yeah, I get it. It's kids in spandex fighting big rubber monsters. Fantastic. Let's go. Let's do that. And, the sequence when, they call down the Megazord, and all the Zords come together to make it. And then the sword comes down from the heaven. Take me out of the real world. It's fantastic.
Absolutely, and it's still a great thing to watch to this day. I don't care how old I get. I'm going to continue to go back and watch Day of the Dumpster or other episodes, depending on what your favorite, moment, season, character, episode, whatever it may be, because there's plenty of all kinds of wonderful things for everybody. So there's that too. And we are talking with the incredible David Fielding on this episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this with all of your friends. And if you have any questions for David, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. Be more than happy to hear from you. And moving things forward just a little bit, there's something you took part in, and this was actually what is known as a fan film, and it was called Zordon of Eltar, directed by Cisco Davis Jr. And the fun fact about this movie, before I ask you something about it, is you and I play a part in this movie, but we were never on set together at the same time. And a lot
just
of
like the original show.
And a lot of this film took place in front of a green screen with visual effects. There's a lot of visual effects in this fan film known as Zordon of Eltar, but it's a great fan film. I think it was really well put together. But my question for you is, how did you end up being a part of this? How did this all come about for you?
Facebook. Because Facebook, happened in 2007, 2008 or whatever. And became like this next big thing about it, really sort of like jump started the social media kind of stuff. I joined Facebook and it was a great way to reconnect with friends that I hadn't seen in 20 years or whatever. But it also allowed complete strangers to reach out to me and ask me if I was the guy that was on Power Rangers. And I believe Cisco found me through Facebook, and we started to exchange emails back and forth. And he had shown me some earlier stuff that he had done, and he asked me if I would like to be a part of this Zordon of Eltar project that he was doing. And he had shown me some concept footage and stuff that he had shot. And I said, yeah, sure. Let's do that. And then he told me that I would be playing the part of a villain because he already had cast Zordon and he knew what was going on with that. I'm like, that's fine. I'll be the villain. Villains get to have a lot more fun. They get to chew the scenery and stuff. So I got cast as King Mondo in that. So yeah.
That must have been a lot of fun to play King Mondo.
Yeah, I mean, I think it ended up being. I mean, again, it was very small. It was just a few lines here and there, but again, I got a chance to be dark and evil, and so it was fun. Yeah,
Absolutely. I think you did a wonderful job, and I actually ended up playing the role of Dragon, who's a villain from the series known as Masked Rider, which was also on Fox Kids at the time, from Haim Saban.
yeah.
You know, because he had all kinds of shows. He had Power Rangers, there was VR Troopers, there was Masked Rider, there was the Mystic Knights of Tirnanog, as well
Big
as
Bad Beetleborg. Was that part
can't
of it?
forget about Flabber, right, David? Can't forget about Flabber and the Big Bad Beetleborgs.
Yeah.
I remember watching those. And also Tim Smith goes, he has something to share with you from something you said earlier. He says, at least they did not go as dark as the original Super Sentai series, Ryan, because the original Super Sentai is much darker.
Oh yeah, the Zoo Ranger from which Power Rangers is adapted. Yeah, they go pretty hard with the Green Ranger, and so yeah.
They very much did so, very much did so. And then a little bit later on, I believe this was in the year 2016, this was aiming to be, whether it was a film or a TV series, where it was you and a bunch of legendary Ranger actors and people who have been on the show in previous years. This was called The Order, which was a project that was being put together both by Karen Ashley and yourself. How did this come about with The Order?
That came about because Karen had been doing conventions for quite some time. Walter had been doing conventions for some time. Austin St. John and I started doing conventions in the same year. He had come back from being overseas and started doing conventions full time in like early 2014. I started doing them in late summer of 2014. And over all those years, one of the questions that Karen kept being asked by fans during Q&A things is like, when are you guys going to get back together? When are we going to see the OG crew come back together? We want to see you guys back on the screen together. And over the years, herself and Catherine Sutherland and Nakia Baris and Jason Font and Walter Jones and David Yost, they'd all been approached in one way or other about, we don't have this project. And for one reason or another, it would always fall apart. The script was no good, or the money was never there, or whatever. So Karen was really wanted to do something where, she got to see her friends at conventions, but it would be really nice if they got to do a project together. And people were kind of tired of waiting for Power Rangers to come calling and say, let's do this thing together. So she had talked to Austin about she wanted to do something. And Austin said, well, hey, Dave's a writer. Why don't you talk to Dave? And so we exchanged emails and we started talking back and forth. And we found out very quickly that we liked a lot of the same things. We got each other's humor. We seemed to collaborate really well. She would write something and send it to me, and I would go, that was fantastic. And what do you think about this? And I would tweak it, and she would go, that is fantastic. And so we just had this really great back and forth between us of being able to write this outline of what she wanted this project to be. And it went through a couple of iterations. The first idea we had was going to be much more of an Ocean's 11 type thing, where we would have this cast that would sort of like con like this rich billionaire out of, this evil billionaire out of things. And they would do some like really cool heist kind of Mission Impossible kind of stuff. But then at some point it transformed into much more of an action thriller type thing, because Karen and I were talking about things that were happening in the real world, cybersecurity, how people's data and information was being taken and lifted, and people were being impersonated, and how these shadow organizations were really sort of like we had no idea what anybody out there in the world was doing and who was watching out for us and all this kind of thing. So we came up with this idea of this shadow organization called the Order that had no government affiliation for whatever country, and they would just go to spots in the world and try to maintain the balance. Sometimes they would do good things, sometimes they would do not so good things, and they were highly skilled, highly trained. They knew how to get in and get out without being seen, without being heard, and they were sort of like, this really ultra elite shadow ops group. And then, of course, as we were writing the script, there's a schism that happens within the group, and they end up fighting one another. So it was sort of like this, the best of the best versus the best of the best kind of thing. And it would all be played by our friends from Power Rangers. And so we finished the script, and we really liked it. We thought it was a good story. And then Karen said, okay, I think I'm ready to show it to our friends now. And she had organized a meet and greet at Nakia Baris's house. And they had invited a bunch of the people that we wanted to be in it over there. And I was standing by on the phone because I was not in California where a bunch of these people were. And it was funny listening to them retell the story about how, Jason Font would show up and like, hey, good to see you. And Catherine Sutherland would show up and like, hey, what are you doing here? And then everybody that showed up at the door is like, what are you guys doing here? What's going on? And, we had I think they had 12 people there. And Karen sat them all down and said, listen, this is what's happening. We've written a script. We would love for all of you guys to be a part of it. So please take the script, take it home, read it, and then let us know in the next 24 to 36 hours if you want to be involved in the project. And they took it home, and Karen said that she got a phone call within the first half hour from somebody that said, I'm in, I love it. And it just happened that way. Like within the first 2 hours of people going home and reading over the script, they said, this is fantastic, let's do this. And so we were very hyped about the whole thing. And later that year, in the late spring, I think it was late spring, we were all going to be in California. We all flew out to California, and we shot the trailer for it. I think it's still up there on the web somewhere. Unfortunately, that trailer ended up costing us the entire project because some I's didn't get dotted, some T's didn't get crossed. And when we met like a year later to actually start filming, we had all the equipment, we had all the cameras, we had all of the locations set, we had our director, we had our people there ready to go. And all of us were in the production offices when the union stepped in and shut it all down. And Karen was devastated, brokenhearted, just in tears about the whole thing because everybody had to go home. And all of the money that we raised through the Indiegogo had to be turned back to people. And Karen, has been trying to keep it going for a long time. I have no idea what the status of the project is these days. We had written 2 volumes of a graphic novel to try to do a prequel story leading up to the story that we wanted to do with the film. We had worked on several scripts about making it a limited miniseries rather than just a long film. And like I said, I have no idea what's going on with it these days. It was, to me, I think it was sort of like a case of strike while the iron's hot, and the iron is very, very cool at this point in time. And so, again, it's one of those disappointing things that happens so often in Hollywood, where you get everything together, you get all the people, everybody, all the roles of cast, you got the director, you've got everything going on, and then it just dies. And it's upsetting to talk about it because we put a lot of time and energy and heart into it, and we didn't get to deliver on it. So it kind of sucks.
Yeah, and I am sorry that's what's transpired with this project, because I remember watching that trailer and thinking this looks great. All these different Rangers from all these different seasons are coming together to put this humongous project together and work together as a team to do it. And I think it was honestly, I love the trailer. I actually bought both the graphic novels that came out with that. I'm happy to say I have those, still do. Never, I never got rid of them, nor will I ever, because I think the Order is a great concept. I think the trailer is one of the best trailers I've ever seen, personally. And
Yeah,
I
I mean,
did actually.
it kind of had like a John Wick feel before John
Mhm,
Wick came out, and
I would agree.
Johnny Bosch was,
Man,
going
he
to
was
be a
vicious
great
in that
villain
trailer.
for it. So yeah, I mean, it was awesome. But,
Yeah, he was vicious in that trailer. And the other thing was, and you mentioned that you don't have the information at this time, but I did get a chance to see and meet with Karen Ashley at GalaxyCon in Richmond
oh,
a
awesome.
few weeks ago. That was the first time I was able to see her in a number of years, actually. Plus, the pandemic didn't help matters. But I saw Karen. I asked her. I said, "Look, I'm just curious. Do you have any updates on the status of the Order?" And she says, "Well, I'm trying to put together and pitch it as a series. That's what I'm doing." And I said, "Karen, I wish you nothing but the best with that, because it sounds wonderful. I loved the trailer. If it lands on its feet and it does get greenlit, I will support you in any way that I can, because I truly, really, I really, really liked the way it was presented in that trailer.
Yeah,
I really
I
did.
was so hoping to see Nakia and Catherine as villains, and
Oh gosh,
it was just fun. I mean, being there and sort of getting to experience uh, being on set while things were filmed and stuff was something that I missed out before, and I got to do it this time, and that was great. And I wish we could have done more with it. I really do. I really do.
well, I do hope something comes of it, whether it's as a series or something like that. But Karen Ashley said that's what she's doing. That's what she's putting together and trying to pitch it as a series. So, Karen, if you're watching this, we wish you the best, 100%.
I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Oh, you're good. Yeah, you're going to be seeing Karen and a number of other Rangers here not too long from now. But as far as conventions, because you mentioned this a moment ago, any specific memories for you that stand out from being at conventions, meeting the fans? Any particular memories stand out to you?
Being at New York Comic Con was fascinating and frightening at the same time. I mean, I think that's the biggest convention I've done. Being able to go to Ireland and spend 10 days in Ireland because of Power Rangers was a dream come true. Being able to go to Belgium and Brussels was fantastic. Lima, Peru. Being able to go to other places around the world because I did something one day 30 years ago is just it's very humbling and very, I feel so grateful to be able to take part in that. And the fact that people all around the world know who we are and who share their love for the show and for us and the characters all the time is such a blessing. And it's one of those things that we hear so many stories about how the show saves people and how it gets them through dark times. And I don't think a lot of you guys are aware of how you guys save us sometimes, because I don't know I can't speak for any of the other cast members, but I've had a lot of dark days the last 5 years or so because my faith in humanity gets chipped away at a lot because of things that happen that are outside of our control. And I spend a great deal of time by myself. And so I don't think the fans or the people that like the show understand how you guys lift us up as much as we lift you up. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. 100%. With this being the 30th anniversary year of the series as a whole with Power Rangers. Have you had a chance to see the 30th anniversary movie that's currently on Netflix, the MMPR Once and Always? And if so, do you have any thoughts on it?
Oh yeah, I mean, for whatever reason, I woke up the day it premiered at like 5 o'clock in the morning. So I was in my chair watching it at 5:30 a.m. I thought it was great. I thought it was fantastic. I really was surprised at the story beat of them trying to bring Zordon back, because over the years, anytime that's been brought up in Q&As and conventions, there have been so many fans who kind of insist that Zordon stay dead because they think that it would lessen his sacrifice at the end of In Space if he was brought back. So to see that moment happen in that show, I was I was very happy about that because, again, the possibility and because of what's all the wonderful, fantastic stuff that's going on in the Boom Studios comic books, from Kyle Higgins and Ryan Parrott and Misty Flores, what those guys have done with the characters, the amazing artists that work on those books and capture the feel of this sort of bright and colorful, semi-cheesy show, and yet still bring it into a much more mature realm of storytelling. What they've done with those characters, the background that Ryan explored with the Eltarian War and what Zordon was like before being trapped in the time warp, and what Misty is doing right now with Rita being so devious and taking his body. It's just wild. But seeing Once and Always was great because I knew right away it was going to be good when I saw David and Walter having a very mature argument and talking about some very straightforward, upfront stuff about how difficult it is to communicate to somebody that we just can't hide this from her. We need to let her know. And Charlie was so amazing as the new character, and I just loved everything about it. I thought it was fantastic. The fight sequences, some of the camera work that they did, Simon Bennett and all those guys are fantastic. The amount of effort and love that they put into the show it shows. I mean, it was really, really good. Couldn't help but get a bunch of butterflies in the stomach when they showed the tribute at the end to Jason and Twee, and I thought it was a very well produced, well written 30th anniversary episode. I thought it was great.
I definitely agree with you about Charlie Kirsch's performance as Min Kwan, the daughter of Twee Trang's character Trini. She did a magnificent.
I think I get to meet her next month, so I'm very excited about that.
Oh, you get to, okay. I'm jealous of that. I'm jealous of that. I mean, I think any fan.
I think she's at Ranger Stop and Pop. So yeah.
Oh my goodness gracious. One of these days I do hope to get out to Ranger Stop and Pop, as well as Ranger Stop Convention, which is held in Orlando, Florida, led by Mikey. And of course, Ranger Stop and Pop is led by Mikey and Nakia and Karen. They do a wonderful job, no question about it. But yes, Charlie Kirsch's performance was great. Story was great. Barbara Goodson coming back. I mean, my goodness. Awesome. 30 years later, she still has not missed a beat.
Oh, well, when you asked me what was one of my favorite convention moments, it involves Barbara. It also involves the Boom Studios comic books. I mean, when Kyle had us do the live read of Shattered Grid,
oh yeah,
that I think is the highlight of me going to conventions as Zordon. That was being able to voice the character again, to trade lines back and forth with Barbara in the same room. That was great. Fantastic.
I actually have the Shattered Grid trade paperback, which I hear is a bit difficult to find these days. So good thing I have that. 100%. And when I meet the writers, I'll make sure to have him sign it. Of course, no question about that. Once again, we are talking with the more phenomenal legend known as David Fielding on this episode of And I Quote. Don't forget to like and share this with everyone you know. And if you have any questions for David, by all means, let us know in the comments. Let us know in the chat. Whether you are joining us live or on the replay, thank you so much for being here. We cannot do this without you. I want to let you know that this episode of And I Quote and every episode of And I Quote is indeed powered by our good friends over there at Poddex. Now, Poddex are unique interview questions as well as episode starting prompts located in the palm of your very own hand. So whether you're a new podcaster or existing broadcaster looking to grow your audience or get more engagement, you're going to want to check out our friends over there at poddex.com. Make sure you use the promo code RYAN10. That's RYAN10 for 10% off your first order. With that being said, David, if everything in your house had to be one color, which color would you choose?
Gray.
Okay. All right. All good. All good.
I'm a big fan of storms. I like thunderstorms, and gray has always been my favorite color because it's all the colors swirled together. It's a very soft and comforting color for me. So yeah, it's not. I don't find it depressing or dull. But yeah.
No, I see where you're coming from with that. If you could look through one person's email without them knowing, whose email would you want to look through?
I wouldn't. I just wouldn't. I find that to be incredibly violating. Wow.
I mean, you can answer it however you wish. You can mention a real person or a fictional character. It doesn't matter.
Stephen King's. I mean, if I could glean some sort of writing nuggets of wisdom or, whatever, I think that would be awesome. But I would never, I would never read anybody else's email. Oh man, that's it. Okay.
It's okay. It's not, these questions tend to be a bit outside the box, but that's okay.
Oh yeah.
Is a hot dog a sandwich and why?
Is a hot dog a sandwich? The hot dog itself is not. Mm-hmm. Because the bun is not necessary to enjoy the hot dog. So a hot dog at a ballpark is a sandwich, but a hot dog at home can be served in a variety of different ways. So I mean, it is and it isn't. It's Schrodinger's sandwich is what it is.
Yes.
Schrodinger sandwich.
Yep. There you go. If you were stranded on a desert island and you could choose one person to keep you company, who would it be?
Oh man, I almost thought, by myself, fantastic. I'm such an introvert. If I could choose one person to be with on a desert island, see, this is one of those things where you can get into a lot of trouble because I'm a guy. And I'm a hetero guy, so my initial thought would be like, well, it would have to be a woman because I'm not going to spend the rest of however long with another dude or whatever.
Right.
Gosh, that's a good question. I'm not sure who it would be, but I can guarantee you she's probably a redhead.
Okay. Fair enough. The sub part of that question is, what about one animal that could keep you company on a desert island?
A cat.
There you go.
Any cat.
Because I heard a cat meowing in the background earlier on in this show.
Yeah.
So, and cats are awesome. So
yeah.
There you go. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Oh, boy. How much would someone have to pay for your little toe?
How much would somebody have to pay for my little toe?
Yeah. The little one.
Enough money to allow me to enjoy the next 20 years of my life.
There you go. A nice number with a lot of zeros behind it. Whether it's a
I mean, I guarantee you I'm not going to miss it. So
okay, that's fair. That's 100% fair. No worry, no worries on that. Well, I want to take this opportunity to. Oh, here's a follow up. Here's one. What's the best or worst piece of advice you've ever been given?
The worst piece of advice I've ever been given is don't say anything. The older you get, I think the thing that you will regret the most is not taking the opportunity to say what you should have said at the time that you had the chance. So I think the worst piece of advice I've ever been given is don't say anything.
Okay. All right. And what would you say is the best piece of advice you've been given?
Just do it. Whatever it is that you think you're going to fail at, you fretting about failing is worse than actually doing it. So just try. That's the best piece of advice that I think I've ever been given, that I could ever give everybody else, is just try. And if you fail, you fail. And if you fall, you fall. And just take the chance. That's the best piece of advice I can give you.
Right on, right on. And Tim Smith has a question for you. He asks, if you could collaborate with any writer, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
If I could collaborate with anybody, I think it would be Ray Bradbury. I mean, I love Stephen King, but I think Ray Bradbury is a great, terrific writer, and kind of, at least through his writing, kind of has the same outlook on life that I do, and so it would be Ray Bradbury. So.
There you go. There you go, Tim. Thank you for sending in that question. We do greatly appreciate it. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you to David J. Fielding for being our guest on this very special and more phenomenal episode of And I Quote. David, thank you so much for being here. Where can the person watching or listening to this follow you on social media and everything that you have coming up?
Sure. I mean, they can follow me at Spoutable at David J. Fielding, or you can find me at Twitter at the same handle at David J. Fielding. I don't know how long Twitter is going to be around. You can find me on Instagram at DJFielding_Zordon. You can find me on TikTok at David J. Fielding, or the real Zordon. Be on the lookout for more books. I've got books coming. I'll be in Minneapolis in early June, and then in Atlanta in the middle of June for conventions, and we'll see what's going on for the rest of the year.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much for being here with us, David Fielding. Do greatly appreciate it. I will speak to you in just a moment here. My name is Ryan of Nerd Culture. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at RyanRPM5. Also, make sure you're following our social medias handles, which are located in the description of this video, whereas you can follow David Fielding. His social media handles are located within the description of this episode. So make sure you check him out, follow him, say hello to him at conventions. Definitely support him and with his book series, everything he has coming up. Also, we are this close to hitting 1,000 subscribers. Once we do, we're going to throw a great big live stream. We're going to have returning guests. We're going to have some surprise guests, as well as special giveaways for you, our incredible subscribers. So make sure you tell 2 friends, because they're going to tell their friends, and so on and so on. You know how these things go. All that stuff is coming up very, very soon. Our next movie anniversary watch along is also coming up. That'll be on May the 25th. We're going to be celebrating the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. That's right. The third portion of that original trilogy celebrates the big 4-0 officially at the end of this month. So make sure you tune in for that. Once again, all the links where you can follow us are located within the description. In the meantime, comment, share, subscribe, smash that notification bell so you get notified when our new videos go up. Thank you once again for joining us. We cannot do this without you. Congratulations to David Fielding and the entire cast and crew of not just Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but Power Rangers as a whole. This is going to be a great year for celebrating this franchise. So many wonderful things are being planned. If you see any of the actors or anyone who's worked on that show at conventions, say hi to them, meet them. They may have been your childhood heroes back in the 90s, such as for myself when I was 6 years old, and I've enjoyed meeting each and every single one of them. Stay healthy, stay strong, stay safe. Life is better when reading, and may the power protect you always.
Famous Faces and Funnies in Melbourne, Florida is leading the way in pop culture fun. From comic books and graphic novels to Funko Pops and collector's items, Famous Faces and Funnies has it all. Rick Shea and the professional team at Famous Faces and Funnies are friendly and knowledgeable. Whether you're looking for toys, props, collector treasures, or a new comic book, Famous Faces and Funnies is your one-stop shop. To find Famous Faces and Funnies on Facebook and Twitter, just type at FFF Comics.
Sweet dreams they placed on me inside my mind. Chance my truth twist the past, my memories are fading fast. Am I still missed? Who do you want me to be? Am I still
Choose high-flying action. Choose death-defying escapes. Choose spine-tingling thrills. Choose nail-biting intrigue. Now's your chance to choose the adventure. The Captain Hawkland Adventures. Available on Amazon.com.
Get ready, kids, because it's the Power Rangers on home video like you've never seen them before. There's 10 hot, more phenomenal video classics now in bright new packages. And now each 30-minute video includes a special feature interview with the Rangers themselves that's not available on TV. Yes! Woo! The 10 repackaged breakthrough videos include Day of the Dumpster, High Five, Food Fight, Happy Birthday Zach, and No Clowning Around. Plus, there's the most popular Ranger of all, the Green Ranger Tommy, in his very own miniseries titled Green with Evil, consisting of the other 5 action-packed videos. Out of Control, Jason's Battle, The Rescue, Eclipsing Megazord, and finally, Breaking the Spell. And the Power Rangers excitement just keeps on growing in 3 brand new videos. These 3 new titles are The Wannabe Ranger, Putty on the Brain, and Bloom of Doom. This new triple power play of video excitement includes a new bad guy, their most menacing adversary yet, the new alien leader, Lord Zed. New Power Zords, fantastic creatures of unbelievable power. Plus, they each contain a special new Power music video. So get ready for more power, more fun, more action, and more special effects with these 13 great Power Ranger home videos.
Good morning. Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.